the engine actually shot forward and just momentarily, and then crashed into yet another engine, the other engine on that wing, and both of the engines also wiped out a lot of the control surfaces, the leading edge of that wing. So the plane, I mean, the pilots didn't know what was going on. Hello and welcome to 10 Walks Explain the Netherlands. This is the 5th walk that I'm doing to explain the Netherlands, and this is the first video. So it's the start of the walk. I'm in a place called Bijlmermeer, which is way out in the far southeastern suburbs of Amsterdam. It's a beautiful sunny day. The sun is up. I've had a good breakfast, and lots of people that I'm passing are saying hello, and there's kids playing on the playground. And it's a fine place to be. But this estate has not always been a fine place to be, and I think that the first time I ever heard about it was back in 1992, and I heard about it on the news back in Britain because of a plane crash. So let me take you back to that time in October 1992 when the sun had been shining all day, just as it is now on this September day. Back in that sunny October evening, there was a flight waiting to take off from Schiphol Airport over there. It was an El Al freighter, a big, an enormous 747, 4 engines, flight 1862, and it took off. It was in Amsterdam on the way from New York to Tel Aviv. It took off for the overnight to Tel Aviv, and its engine spooled up. It barreled down the runway at enormous speed, as 747s do, and it took off in that direction and started heading off east of Amsterdam. What happened then was that a fuse pin, a tiny little pin in one of the engines on the right hand side, failed, snapped, and it suddenly transferred load to the other fuse pins, which also failed. I mean, in a way they were designed to fail, and the whole idea was that the engine would just fall off from the wing and the plane would then be able to call an emergency and land absolutely safely. But what happened was that the engine actually shot forward and just momentarily, and then crashed into yet another engine, the other engine on that wing, and both of the engines also wiped out a lot of the control surfaces, the leading edge of that wing. So the plane, I mean, the pilots didn't know what was going on, and suddenly the plane yawed to the right, to the starboard side. So what were they going to do? Well, they basically called an emergency. They got in touch with the guys back at Schiphol and said, listen, we're losing control. And they were losing control every single second, and they were routed back over Amsterdam, but the plane just kind of was locked in this spiral, unable to lift the right hand wing, and the slower it went, the less lift that wing got because of the damage to it. And although normally a plane like that can fly on 2 engines or even 1, this was just catastrophic, and it went in a massive spiral, and before they knew it, it crashed. And it crashed literally just over behind where I'm sitting. The plane came down pretty much behind me. We're in the middle of the Bijlmermeer estate at the minute. It's it's quite a tidy place. People are saying hello. There's nice shops. There's even an Albert Heijn, a sign that of established Dutch life over there in the corner. It's not a bad place to be at all. But this wasn't always like this. Now, the Bijlmermeer estate where this came down was a pretty godforsaken place back in 1992. It had been built as a kind of utopian project. It was like a garden suburb. As you can see, there's bits of water, there's trees, there's gardens, and then there's this kind of honeycomb of high-rise buildings that kind of interlock, and sort of everyone has a garden view. It's one of those places. But when it was first built, it wasn't connected to the transport. It was an isolated spot stuck way out, far from the city. The metro that you can now go through very quickly. I came here this morning from the centre of Amsterdam. Takes 20 minutes or something. But back then it really was isolated. And all of the Dutch people who had reserved flats up in Bijlmermeer, they basically all cancelled. And for 10 years, maybe more, this place was a dumping ground for everyone that just didn't quite fit in. There were lots of unregistered, undocumented migrants. There were squatters. There were a lot of drug users. There were Surinamese coming over from newly independent Suriname. There were Ghanaians and lots of people from sub-Saharan Africa. Funny thing was, even to this day, no one really knows how many people died here when that 747 ploughed into this enormous couple of blocks of flats. It was an absolutely ghastly scene, but beyond the people on the plane itself, no one quite knew who was living in all of those flats. So, you know, everyone knew that dozens had died. Thankfully, because it was a lovely evening, a lot of people were outside and were unaffected. But it was one of those things that's an enduring mystery to this day. If there is a symbolic start to this walk, it's this particular bridge. It's called the Pa Sem bridge. Pa Sem was one of those people who throughout his life tried to make a difference. He was originally from Suriname. He came over a few years earlier, and he actually set up a kind of communal space in one of the abandoned apartments, just where I'm standing now, and tried to do the best for the people around him, make sure that things worked out. Gave them much more of a purpose and tried to get them away from the kind of drugs and all the other problems that were associated with what was then a very godforsaken place. Now, when it actually happened, when the plane hit, he managed to get out, but there was he met a young girl who was screaming that her 10-year-old brother was still stuck inside, and Pa Sem ploughed straight back inside, managed to locate the boy, grabbed him and dragged him outside. A pipe at one point, which was on fire, broke and fell on him. By the time he got outside, he'd saved the boy, but he was an absolute mess. He is absolutely covered in burns and an absolute horrible thing, but you know, I suppose that it was part of how he lived his life. He was an absolute hero and tried to do the best for other people, and you know, he lived on after that. Eventually, retired back to Paramaribo down in Suriname, and this bridge is the kind of quiet, quite peaceful monument in the middle of this estate to his life and his heroism. If this is a symbol of what went wrong in the 60s and 70s, maybe this is also a symbol of exactly what the Netherlands gets right. It's not a bad place at all, even remembering back to that horrible tragedy back in 1992.